Let's start. So before we begin the
Yeah.
today's session, let's quickly recap the what we learned in our previous session. Okay. So in our previous session, we focused on Azure storage architecture and data platform design. Okay. And we covered the Azure storage account, GPv2 storage account, storage redundancy model, LRS, GRS,
Mm.
RAGRS, GZRS,
And
Azure Blob
Azure. Yeah.
Storage, access tiers,
Yeah.
lifecycle management, Azure Files, Azure File Sync,
Yeah.
and Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. So, most
Mm.
importantly, we learned that the data is often the most valuable asset in an
Mm-hmm.
organization. Okay.
Yeah.
However, storing data is only one part of the solution. Okay. The next question is every architect must answer is what happened when something goes wrong.
Goes
Okay.
on.
Like
Yeah.
example, a VM is accidentally deleted. A random
Mm.
ransomware attack encrypts files. Okay. A storage
Yeah.
account becomes corrupted. Okay. An Azure region experience an outage, and Azure
Mm.
applications or any applications become unavailable. Okay. So this
Yeah.
is where the business continuity and the disaster recovery, which is
Yeah.
BCDR, become critical. Okay.
Yeah.
So today the topics. So why the today topics matter? Okay. So many organizations focus heavily on security, performance, scalability, but fail to prepare the adequately for the recovery. Okay. So
Mm.
unfortunately, the failures are invisible.
Mm.
And now the question is not will something fail? The question is when something fails, how
Oh.
quickly can the business recover?
Will recover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So consider this example. Let's suppose
Mm.
online banking platform every minute of the downtime may cost revenue, customer trust, regulatory
Mm.
penalties. Okay.
Mm.
And in hospital systems, downtime may impact the patient's care, clinical operations, emergency services. And what about the e-commerce platform? So an outage during a major sales event can result in the lost revenue, customer dissatisfactions, brand damage.
Mm.
Okay, just like
Mm.
suppose like uh, Amazon. So if anything
Yeah.
goes to the Amazon, like it's outage in Amazon. So like in that case, the revenue loss, customer dissatisfactions, and the brand image,
Mm.
okay, goes down. So this is why the Azure Architect must design for recovery, resilience, business continuity,
Yeah.
disaster recovery,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so
Mm.
from the very beginning, okay, not after that,
Yes.
from very
Good.
beginning, they
Good
could
to
all
know.
plan all the things. Okay,
Mm.
so by this
Well,
by
okay.
end of this
If
sessions,
sorry, let me ask you a question.
yeah.
If they don't build it from the beginning, can we now make it like can they re-engineer it?
Mhm.
Can it be engineered if it's not done from the beginning?
So
Hold on.
by end
Hold
of
on,
this,
please. Hold on. Hold on.
okay,
Hold on.
okay,
Hold on.
okay,
Sorry.
yeah. So by end of this session, you will able to learn the understand business continuity and disaster recovery. Okay, and
Mm.
understand the RTO and RPO matrices, design the Azure backup
Okay.
solutions. Okay, also look the
Yeah.
elevate recovery service vault.
Mm.
Also see the design enterprise backup strategy. Also we look for
Okay.
understand how to understand the enterprise recovery requirement. Okay, and uh, also like think like a resilience focus architecture, and also like we will look some questions according to
Okay.
AZ-305 exam. Okay,
Okay.
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 So uh, before we discuss the Azure backup or Azure site recovery, we must first understand the foundation of every recovery architecture. Okay, that foundation consisted of two concepts, which is
Mm.
RTO and RPO. Okay, so what is RTO? So it is recovery time objective, and RPO is recovery point objective. Okay, so
Okay.
these concept drives almost every business. Okay, continuity decision
Mm.
in the Azure. Okay, so one of the biggest
Mm.
mistake new architect makes is immediately choosing the technology before understanding the business requirement. Okay, for example,
Mm.
if a customer says we need a disaster recovery, okay,
Yeah.
and in experience architecture immediately start discussing the Azure backup, Azure Site Recovery, or replications. But an experienced architect asks how much
Mm.
downtime you can tolerate.
Mm.
Okay, how much
Mm.
data loss you can tolerate. So
Mm.
these questions determine the entire recovery architecture.
Mm.
Okay, so what is the
Okay.
business continuity? Okay, before we go business continuity, let's take the definition of RTO and RPO. So in RTO, the maximum
Mm.
acceptable amount of time that an applications can be unavailable after a disaster.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
but in RPO, the maximum acceptable amount of data loss measured in time, and it takes the required backup frequency. Okay,
Yeah.
now back to the business continuity. What is business continuity? So business continuity refers to an organization's ability to contribute operation during and
Mm.
after a disruption. Okay, for example,
Okay.
so what is the example of the disruption? So example is hardware failure, cyber attacks, natural disaster, human error, power outage, or regional outage.
Mm.
Okay, so
Mm.
business continuity focused on keeping the critical business functionings running even during the
Mm-hmm.
unexpected events. Okay, so
Yeah.
what is a disaster recovery? Okay, so disaster recovery is a subset of the business continuity. Okay, so
Mm.
disaster recovery focus especially on recovery technology system after major disruptions. For example,
Disruption. Yeah.
yeah, recovery your VM like virtual machine, recovery your databases where the data is
Mm.
stored, recovery the applications, okay, and recovery the storage. So think of it like way business continuity goes with the disaster recovery. Okay, like business
Okay.
continuity is a border and disaster recovery
Yeah.
focus on IT recovery.
Mm.
Okay, so why do we need business continuity? So imagine a global financial institutions having the application support of the trading system, payment system, customer portals.
Mm.
Without recovering the planning, application failure, business stops, revenues lost. Okay, and with recovery planning, application failure, recovery process, and business continue. Okay, so the
Yeah.
difference can be millions of dollars. Okay,
Mm.
so let's take the real world enterprise scenario. Imagine a multinational airlines. Okay, which system support like flight booking, customer check-ins, flight
Mm.
scheduling, and operation
Yeah.
logistics. Okay, so if the
Yeah.
booking platform fails, what will be the consequences? So consequences include
Data
the
loss.
exactly data loss, revenue loss,
Data loss. Yeah.
customer dissatisfactions, or
Absolutely.
operation
Absolutely.
disruption.
Yeah.
Okay,
Disruption. Yeah.
yeah. So business define the maximum downtime
Mm.
30 minutes. The multinational airlines company will like define the maximum downtime is 30 minutes
Mm.
and maximum data loss
Mm.
is 5 minutes. So these
Mm.
requirements directly influence the architecture design. We have to
Yeah.
consider these
Okay.
all things in our architecture design to architect this
Mm.
system. Okay, so now understand the RTO recovery time objective. Okay,
Yeah.
so one of the most important architect concept RTO. So like how quickly must the service recover? So let me write here. So it will be inflow like
Mm. Okay.
outage occurs. I'm writing in chat for you. Okay, so you will
Yeah.
take notes
Yeah.
in
I'll go
later.
back to
Okay,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So outage occurs, then it's
Mm.
go to recovery.
Mm.
It starts, then it's go to service
Okay.
restored. Okay, you can see
Okay.
the your chat. Okay,
Yeah.
and the time is and this time will be your recovery time. Okay, so
Okay.
what is the example of RTO? So let's suppose business requirement is suppose maximum
Mm.
maximum dt is equal to downtime. Okay, is 1 hour. Okay,
Mm.
so what the architecture requirement? So RTO will be your 1 hour. Okay,
Yeah.
so this solution must restore the service within 1 hour.
One
Okay,
hour.
so
Yes.
now understanding the RPO, recovery point objective. So how much data loss is acceptable? So let's take example. Okay, data written, and its flow will be from data written to failure
Mm.
occurs. Okay, then it will be recovery. Okay, so any data loss not recovered falls within the RPO. Okay, so let's take example. Maximum data loss is equal to 15 minutes. Okay,
Okay.
so what will be the architecture requirement? So architecture requirement will be RPO will be 15 minutes. Okay,
Okay.
so backup and replication must support this objective. Okay, now visualizing the RPO and RTO. Okay, let me write here in the chat itself. So suppose there is data timeline. Okay, so there is data time. Okay, now
Yeah.
in which data written. Okay, and it it goes to failure occurs. Okay,
Yeah.
then to service restored. Okay, so where will be RPO and RTO exist? So RTO and RPO will exist here. Like RPO will exist between the data written to the failure occurs. So here will be the your RPO, and where the RTO exists, so RTO exists from failure to restored. So here will be your RTO. Okay. So why R2 and RPO matter? So these two matters determine backup strategy, replication strategy, recovery architecture, okay, cost, complexity. So without understanding the RTO and RPO, architects cannot design the correctly. Okay. So architect. So let's take the architecture decision example. So let's take scenario one, business requirement. Okay. So your requirement will be, let's take business This requirement will be RTO is equal to 24 hours and RPO is equal to same 24
Mm. Hours.
hours. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
what is the possible solution here? What what will be the possible solution?
Solutions there.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
possible solution will be, okay. See my chat.
Okay.
Okay. Look, I'm written the business requirement. The RTO is 24. RPO is 24. So what will be the possible solutions? Can you guess?
Um. What will be the possible solution?
Hmm.
Um, okay. For when there's a disaster recovery, the possible solution would be first of all to shut down all application.
Hmm. Yes. Yes. More.
Yeah. Shut.
No.
Yeah. Shut
So
down all
it will
application.
be
Okay.
answer will be The possible solution is daily backup.
Okay,
Daily
okay,
backup,
okay, okay.
which will
Hmm.
low you cost, which will be low cost. Okay,
Okay, okay.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Let's take scenario two.
Yeah.
Let me write once again in the chat. Which
Okay.
requirement is now the RTO equal to 15 minutes and RPO to will be also 15 minutes. Okay.
Mhm.
Now tell me what will be the possible solution. Look it in the chat and tell me.
Okay. Ah, what would be uh, business requirement? What would be the possible solution
Yeah.
for the business requirements? What would be the possible solution for business requirements? Not at the top of my head.
Okay, no issue. I will I will help you. So the possible
Yeah.
solution will be your replication.
Oh, and I
Okay.
thought of it. I thought of it. You
Okay.
ask again for the requirements. Oh, I thought of it. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Yeah.
So possible
Okay. Okay.
solution will be your
Replication. Okay.
repli replication. Let me
Replication.
write here so you
Okay.
will have
Okay.
note. And
That's
second will be
fine.
your automated failover.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
And
That's
third
fine.
one is your site recovery.
Mm,
Okay.
okay.
So which is higher in cost. Okay.
Mm, mm,
So now okay. So let's take another scenario. Okay.
okay.
Listen carefully and I uh, I wish you we will answer correctly. Okay.
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
biz requirement will be RTO is near to zero. RPO also near to zero. Now tell me what is possible solution?
Ah, if it's near zero.
Tell me.
Ah, if it's near zero, then we have to re-engineer.
No,
No.
you're very close, but okay, let me tell you. So possible solution will be your multi-region architecture and active design and continuous
Oh my
replication.
God.
Okay,
Okay. Okay. Okay.
okay, and
Okay. Okay.
so which is your high complexity and cost. Okay,
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now? So yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Let's
can hear.
continue. Yep.
Yeah, so the possible solution will be your multi-region architecture, active design and continuous replication. Okay, so what will the architecture diagram for that, like, or architecture flow? So let me write here. So it's simple. It's very simple. So what is arc diagram for that? It will be your like production environment goes to failure, then goes to very important recovery mechanism. Okay, then goes to service restored. Okay. Now, so what? So what is the production workload? So it's a business application. And what is the failure event? So it's unexpected disruptions. And what is the recovery process? Is a restoration procedure. So recovery target defined by RTO and RPO. Okay, and restore services defined by operational workload. Okay, so now take the security consideration. So recovery architecture must protect the against your ransomware, data corruptions, credential compromise, unauthorized backup access, and backup. The security is often the overload. Okay, and what will the governance consideration? So it will be the when like organizations should define the recovery objective, recovery ownership, testing schedules, documentation standard. So these are the recovery governance is critical.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so now what is the high availability consideration? So high availability consideration reduce the outage, disaster recovery restore the service after the major failures. So remember always HA, and HA means high availability. Okay, look here, HA versus disaster recovery. So HA will be the high availability which is not equal to DR, which is direct disaster recovery. So let's take the
Okay.
definition of both of these. So what is HA? High availability. The focus on the fault tolerance within a single primary regions uses the availability zones, load balancer, okay, and
Mm.
clustering the service localized hardware failure automatically. Okay, and what is disaster recovery, which is DR? Focus on the surviving, okay,
Yeah.
catastrophic
Catastrophic.
region
Yeah.
wide you outage require
Mm.
across region replications, Azure Site Recovery, and orchestrated failover procedure to a secondary geographical locations. Okay, so if you
Mm.
see the diagram here, okay, here is a traffic manager, DNS routing. Here is customer. Okay, what is before failover? There is one VM and one SQL Server, okay, which is a primary on-site, okay. And what will be the after failover? So here you will see the virtual machine, the same virtual machine and same server, which is recovery VM, like after Azure failover site, okay, which can be backed by, flowed by site recovery or blob
Site
storage,
recovery. Blob strong storage.
okay.
Yeah.
Now, so what will the cost optimization consideration? So one of the most important architecture trade-off, lower RTO and lower RPO generally require the more infrastructures, more replications, and more automations. Okay, which increase the cost. And architect must balance the business requirement against the budget constraints. Okay, so what will the common mistake? So designing recovery without business requirement, confusing the HA and DR, never testing the recovery procedure, no documentations, RTO, RPO, assuming the backup guarantee fast recovery and ignoring the ransom recovery planning. So what will be your like best practices? So best practices will be define the RTO and RPO first, align the technology with the business needs, test the recovery
Okay.
regularly, document the recovery procedure, prioritize the critical workload, automate recovery where possible, and recovery review the recovery requirement annually. Okay, now
Okay.
let's take the one AZ-305 exam perspective. So scenario one, maximum downtime allowed in 2 hours. So question will be which ITech meet the required RTO. Okay, and
Mm.
if the scenario is maximum acceptable data loss in 5 times, so question will ask which solution meet the required RPO. Okay, so understanding the RTO and RPO is more often important than memorizing the service names. Okay,
Mm.
so now we will see the design Azure backup architecture recovery service and Vault. So in our previous topic, we learned that every business continuity and disaster recovery, which is BCDR, Okay,
Yeah.
solution start with the understanding. Okay, like RTO, Rio recovery time objective, RPO, recovery point objective. So now that we know how to define recovery requirements, the next question becomes how do actually protect data and workload in Azure. Okay, so this is where the Azure backup becomes one of the most important service in the Azure
Uh,
recovery. Okay, so imagine administrator accidentally delete the a production virtual machine. Okay, a SQL database or a critical file share or consider a ransom attack. Okay, which is your production data encrypted or unavailable. So without backlog, recovery may be impossible. Okay, with properly designed backup, production data goes to the failure and then it goes to the recovery backup, then service restored. Now the business operations continue. So as a cloud architect, one of our primary responsibility is ensuring that the critical business data can always be recovered. Okay. So
recovered.
what is Azure Backup? So Azure Backup provide high scalable secure data protection with the zero infrastructure overhead. It natively integrates with the virtual machine, SQL Server, or SAP HANA. Define general backups policy for the automated scheduling and leverage geo-redundant storage GRS to ensure the data durability across the region. So if I simplify it, so Azure Backup is a Microsoft Cloud native backup as a service, which is BaaS solutions, and it provides the centralized backup and recovery for Azure Virtual Machine, Azure Files,
Mm,
Azure SQL Database, SAP HANA Database, Azure Blob, on-premises server, or hybrid workload. Okay, so Azure Backup
mm,
eliminates the need for the tape backup, backup infrastructures, backup storage
mm,
management, or backup never
yeah,
server maintenance. Okay, so
yeah.
the question will arise, why do we need Azure backup? So many organizations mistakenly believe the replication is equal to backup, but not. That is incorrect. Okay, so let understand why. Okay, example, data encryption. Suppose a user delete a file. So in that case, primary storage file deleted. Because the replication copy changes, the primary storage deletion replications and which goes to the secondary storage. And the deleted file disappear everywhere. Replication does not help. Okay. So backup architecture will be your production data, schedule backup, recovery point, and restored available. Okay. So now the file can be restored. So this is why the replication protect the ability, backup protect the recoverability and critical distinctions, and this is the critical distinction for your AZ-305 paper or exam. Okay, not look what is the recovery service board like, which is comes under the Azure backup architecture. Okay, so recovery service vault is a management layer for backup and recovery operations. Okay, think of it as the control center for the Azure backup, and it is stored the backup policy, recovery points, backup metadata, recovery configurations. Okay, so architecture will be, let me write here, your architecture will be workload. It goes to recovery service vault. Then it goes to first backup policies. Then it goes to second recovery points. Then it goes to third restored operations. Okay, Now, why do we need recovery service vault? Okay, so without centralized vault, managing the thousand of the VMs, hundred of the database, multiple subscriptions would become extremely difficult. So Vault can provide the centralized management, security, governance, monitoring, recovery control. So core component of the Azure Backup is protected resource, which is the component one. The workload being backup, like virtual machine, Azure File, SQL, okay, database. So what will be the
Nice. Okay.
component two? So component two will be backup policy, okay, which define the
Okay.
when the backup occurs, how long backups are retained, okay. And what will the component three? So recovery point, a snapshot representing data as a specific point in a time, okay. And what will the component four? So component four will be recovery service vault, which store and manage the backup informations, okay. So if we summarize all the components, so it will be Azure workload generate the business data, backup agent service perform the backup operations, recovery service vault store the backup metadata and control recovery, okay. And recovery point restore the target. So what will be the step by step backup flow? Okay, so step one will be backup policy triggers. Step two will be Azure
On this
creates
end.
step by step backup flow. Okay, so first step will be backup policy triggers. Step two will be
Mm-hmm.
Azure creates recovery point. Step three will
Point.
be recovery point store.
Restore.
Step four will be backup status validated, and step five is monitoring updates, and step six is recovery
Okay.
point become available, okay. So these are
Okay.
the
Okay.
backup flow. Let me write here
Mm. Mm.
step by step
So it hopefully say the
backup
point.
flow. It will be step one is your backup policy triggers. Step
Oh,
two will be your Azure creates recovery points. Step three is recovery point stored. Step four is equal to backup status validated. Step five is your monitoring dates. Step six will be recovering point become available. Okay,
um,
so these are the step by step backup flow. And what will the step by step restore flow? So let me have write here step by step restore flow will be your first will be administrator select recovery point. Second will be Azure validates backup. Third will be recovery process begins. Fourth will be VM restored. Fifth will be service returns to operation. Okay. Now, what are the common mistakes? So, assuming the replication equal backup, never testing the restores, no retention strategy, excessive retention cost, ignoring the soft delete, or no monitoring, and protecting only the production systems. Okay, and what will the best practices? So, it define the RTO first, use recovery service vault, enable the soft delete, test restore regularly, monitor the backup health, protect the critical workload, and implement the Azure RBAC. So let's take the AZ305 exam perspective. So let's take scenario one. The organization must recover the deleted files from the previous point in time. So answer will be always Azure backup. And if the organization needs centralized backup
Yeah,
management,
yeah.
then answer will be recovery service vault.
So,
Okay,
okay, yeah.
and the
Okay.
company, if the company requires the long term retention for backup, so answer will be Azure backup policies plus retention rule. And if the question asks the business wants to protect against the accidental backup deletion, so answer will be soft delete. Okay, now let's see the considerations of it. Okay, so what will the security considerations? So ITech should implement the soft delete MFA for backup operations, RBAC, backup monitoring, immutable backup protections where applicable, backup isolations. Backups are primary ransom target. Okay, and governance condition will be organizations should define the backup ownership, retention standard, compliance requirement, recovery testing schedules. Okay, which governance ensure consistency, and what will be the scalability considerations. So Azure backup support like thousand of the workload, large enterprise, multi subscriptions environment, and recovery service board centralize the management at the scale. And what will be the
Hmm.
high ability considerations? So high ability considerations. Okay, always remember, backup is not a high ability. Okay, backup
Okay.
restore the workload.
Okay. Okay.
They do not eliminate the downtime. Okay, and
Hmm.
this is frequently appears in your AZ-305 question or exam or even your project. Okay,
Okay.
so what
Hmm.
will
Hmm.
so now what will the disaster recovery concentration? So disaster recovery considerations is always backed by backup support like data recovery, workload recovery, accidental
Okay.
deletions
Hmm.
recovery, ransom recovery. However, okay, however, the Azure Site Recovery often provide the faster DR, disaster recovery capabilities. Okay, so we will study ASR in our next topic. Okay,
Okay.
so now what will be the cost optimizations consideration in that case? So cost optimization considerations in which the backup cost depend upon the what? Can you guess?
Okay. The workload. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Tell
Okay.
me. So
Yeah. What did you
backup.
say? Sorry. Did you ask a question? Sorry.
Yeah, I asked a question. So, what will be the cost optimization consideration in on the terms of backup? So, backup cost depend upon the protected instance. So, what is
Okay.
your instance? Instance is your like VM. Okay, instance is your like database. So, these are instance. Then retention durations. Then
Okay.
storage consumption. So, every cloud architect should align retention with the business requirement. Okay,
Okay.
and always have to avoid the excessive retentions, unnecessary backup, while still meeting the compliance requirement. And what will the monitoring considerations? So monitor will be always backup success rate. It look the
Hmm.
failure failed job, vault health, recovery point creation, storage growth. Okay, a backup that is never monitored is not a reliable backup. Okay, so now one of the most dangerous misconceptions in the cloud architect is being that replications and backup are the same thing, but replications
Okay.
protect ability, backup protects recoverability. So
Okay. Okay.
as a cloud attack or Azure attack, our goal is not to simply to store the copy of data. Our goal is to ensure the data can be recovered quickly,
Recovered.
securely,
Yeah.
predictably
Mm-hmm.
when failures occurs, so that
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
recovery service won't become the central nervous system of the backup operations, and it allow us to
Okay.
understand the policy, enforce governance, and manage recovery at the enterprise scales.
Okay.
So always
Okay.
remember, backup are not
Okay.
successful because they are
Sorry.
completed.
Hmm.
Backup are successful
Hmm.
because they can be restored when the business needs them.
Restored. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So these
Okay.
are our today sessions.
Okay.
We will next
Hmm.
meet you next weekend. Till then,
Yeah.
go and revise and
Yeah.
enjoy your weekend and take care.
And you
We will see
too.
you
Yeah.
next week.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye
Next
bye.
week. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.